Making It Personal with Bishop William Joensen on Iowa Catholic Radio and iowacatholicradio.com.
Welcome to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. I'm Kelly Mesher-Collins at the Diocese of Des Moines. Our guest today is Michael Patrick O'Brien. We're visiting about his book, Monastery Mornings, My Unusual Boyhood Among the Saints and Monks. This book tells the story of O'Brien's upbringing and how he's found unlikely family in the company of the Cistercian monks. But before we get to today's interview, let's find out what's on the Bishop's mind.
Hey, Kelly. Good to be with you again. And October in Iowa, I think all of us have a little lilt in our step and also enjoy the beautiful fall. And the farmers obviously finally able to bring in the harvest. We pray it's bountiful for them and for those who most need the fruits of their labors as well. It was great to be with the people of Immaculate Conception Parish in St. Mary's last weekend, the postponed celebration of their 150th anniversary. So beautiful liturgy in that very intimate parish space that they have. And of course, very Catholic, the sumptuous feed that followed from it. But just to laugh and be present to each other again, the grace that we savor evermore in the wake of the pandemic. And so that was a marvelous thing. And then also an Andrew dinner are resuming now, the chance for men who are considering the priesthood to be together at table, to hear some priests and share fellowship and some witness from all. And I certainly appreciate that. And those have borne great fruit in the men that now we have 15 seminarians this year in the seminaries, the major seminaries, and also at St. John Vianney Seminary and the University of St. Thomas and Loras College as well. When we think about the fraternity that we experience, I bet any young man who have been with us at the priest workshop a couple of weeks ago at the St. Benedict Center in Schuyler, Nebraska, would have been impressed just how the laughter, the good-natured ribbing, but we were really well fed. And I think the people of God in the Diocese of Des Moines and beyond will be edified to know that we were blessed to have Father Peter John Cameron, the former editor of Magnificat, come to spend some days with us to reflect on the art and the mystery of preaching and breaking open the Word of God for people and its centrality in the Mass. I think, he asked us to kind of what's the grade that we would give preaching in the American church right now. I think a B was probably one of the higher marks that people had. And so if we asked people, I don't know what we would hear back in return. But really, I think kept our attention. That's no easy crowd for 3 days to really ask us to think about what we're doing there as an act of the Spirit and as a central act of our priestly ministry that is equal to confecting the Eucharist in the words of institution, the person of Jesus as well. And so there was a lot to chew on in what he offered us. I certainly myself found myself stretched by some things and challenged to reflect on what I'm about as I spend time in the pulpit. That awesome and humbling art that is there. But he, among the things that he shared with us, citing Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger before he became Pope Benedict, that the aim of preaching is to tell man who he is and what he must do to be himself. It is to disclose the truth about himself, what he can base his life on, and what he can die for. And so this sentiment that people have, they're looking for something, for an encounter, in a way, an encounter of this presence of the mystery, just as the Archangel Gabriel with Mary, the moment of the incarnation, that the Word is to be incarnated again and again in the hearts of the listeners, but that we have to open up people, not just by spouting ideas in some way, for when we do that, really beginning to bring together where a synthesis, as Pope Francis will speak of, but a proposal that answers a question that's already rumbling around in our hearts. And that proposal is not just going to make suffering go away or anything, but to remind us that God is truly present and to pierce that tedium or boredom that, yes, we know people will very readily check out during homilies. And sometimes they're quite justified in doing so when we are not about this mystery. And that, apart from anything that we say, it's the fact that the priest, the deacon himself, is a committed believer, that he's discovered this for himself as the central truth of his life, and that's what's radiating. And yes, there's going to be emotion and passion that is stirred in all of this, and there has to be substantive content that any humor or anything else that we're about is going to engage the mind. And oftentimes on the heels of a joke, Father Peter would say, is the perfect time to lay some deeper theological truth in people because they're ripe then as a seedbed to receive this. So we'll see. People can verify this for themselves if the priests on fire evermore, thanks to the gift that Father Peter John Cameron gave us.
All right. We're going to take a quick break. Listen, Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Catholic Women Now provided in part by Marr Security, providing security solutions for homes and businesses since 1953. Marr Security is a Catholic-owned family business supplying security systems, access control systems, video surveillance, fire alarm systems, and video doorbells. All alarm systems are monitored out of their monitoring center located in the state of Iowa. Marr Security, 515-244-5660, permarsecurity.com. Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and John Leonetti in the Morning is provided by Five Sons Naturescapes. Five Sons Naturescapes is a Catholic veteran-owned family company providing premium outdoor landscaping. Clean up and restore outdoor living space with retaining walls, privacy fencing, pergolas, paver sidewalks, and patios. Issues with soil settling and water around the foundation and yard? Five Sons Naturescapes can grade and install drainage tile to help. Five Sons Naturescapes online at fivesonsnaturescapes.com.
Welcome back. You're listening to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. Our guest today is Michael Patrick O'Brien, author of the book Monastery Mornings, My Unusual Boyhood Among the Saints and Monks. This book tells the story of O'Brien's upbringing and how he found unlikely family in the company of the Cistercian monks.
Mr. O'Brien, thank you for being on with us today. And we've never met in person, but I feel through your memoir, The Monastery Mornings, that I was able to read, very touched. I think we're kind of kindred spirits in so many ways, being less than a year apart age-wise, and just the era in which we grew up, the 60s and 70s, so much there that really resonated with me, and I think will resonate with many readers, regardless of their age, and how you weave together so many things, your own personal life narrative, your encounter with the monastic community in Utah, and reflections on the vocation of a Trappist monk, and reflections on church and life in general. So very poignant, and there's so much there. We can only kind of sample it, but I hope it whets people's appetite as well. So you're kind of that Irish Catholic DNA that you've got, and yet moving from the New England, the roots there, transporting you and being a military brat as well, spanning different continents too. Could you just kind of get us situated with how you landed in Utah, but what led up to that?
Yes, and thank you, Bishop, for having me on your show. We love our bishop here, Oscar Solis, and if you're a shepherd like he is, and then the people of Iowa are in good hands. So thank you. Look
forward to maybe having a chance to sit down with him during the USCCB national meeting in November. But please continue.
But so we were a New England family, Air Force. Born all around the world, literally ended up at Hill Air Force Base in Utah. And unfortunately, in the early 1970s, my parents got divorced, which was a fairly traumatic event for the family, as you might imagine. And my mother, good Irish Catholic girl from Vermont, was looking for islands of stability. And we took a drive one day and happened to stumble unexpectedly upon this monastery in Huntsville, and we went in, and my mother was looking for a book, and she said to one of the brothers, do you know what I'm looking for? And he interrupted her, and he said, yes, same as the rest of us, peace. And, to quote Casablanca, it was the beginning of a beautiful friendship. From that point on, with that we sort of stumbled on the place that changed our life, in other words.
So she was not intent on landing at the monastery that day, but it was just maybe God's providence that led you there in that way. And then, yes, the divorce and your relationship with your father, and that was strained, obviously. And your mom, a kind of hardscrabble woman who worked extremely hard, but saw fit to continue to cultivate this relationship with the monks at Abbey of Our Lady of Holy Trinity, which traces its own bloodlines to Gethsemane in Kentucky. Could you just maybe expose that for us?
Yes. In 1947, almost 75 years ago, Gethsemane was overflowing with monks right after World War II, and just at the time that Thomas Merton published his famous autobiography, and they needed to find another place to put some of those monks, and they found a ranch in northern Utah, bought the place, and started a new foundation there in the middle of Latter-day Saint country, and it's good that they did, because that's the monastery that we happened to stumble on about 25 years later after they founded it.
I mean, and as monasteries go, relatively new in 1947 in the wake of World War II and the flourishing there. And then you make reference, among the saints, My Unusual Boyhood, not what a Catholic looking at that title would automatically think you're referring to when you speak of the saints.
Correct. Yes. And although Mother Teresa was here, and that's a story we can share as well, but the saints, the Latter-day Saints, the monks were neighbors to members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And, one of the most remarkable things I observed, and even in my young age, was the remarkable friendships that developed between people of two very different religious persuasions. And a friendship that I might add lasts to this day. We were up at the monastery grounds just last weekend for a picnic, and many of the neighbors came by and bought the book and commented about the wonderful friendships they had with the Utah monks.
Oh, and that engagement, that interaction. And of course, they had a massive farm and doing things, obviously their work on the land would resonate with our Iowa and Nebraska listeners here on Iowa Catholic Radio, the Spirit Catholic Radio Network. And for those who are familiar with the New Melleray Abbey just outside Dubuque and near Piasta and Our Lady of the Mississippi, the Trappistines as well, that those are images that were coming to mind for me as you're describing this massive enterprise as well. But you were kind of, as a boy, an interloper almost. They took a shine to you and seemingly received you as well. And you got to know various individuals, and you describe many of them with great fondness, and yet their humanity also shone through very vividly.
Yes, for some reason they took me under their wings. I don't know if I was a surrogate son or if they were surrogate fathers, or maybe it was a little bit of both, but they let me follow them around and, pretend like I was helping them on the farm. I don't know that I added much to the efficiency of the operation, but I learned a lot. I learned a lot about work. I learned a lot about integrating, your spiritual life with your work life. Most importantly, Bishop, I just, at that point in time, I was a little lost, didn't have a father. I needed father figures to care about me. And these men took time from their contemplative life to care about a little boy.
Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, in the background, there are these seismic cultural events that are seared for many of us in our memories. The assassinations of JFK, RFK, and MLK in the 60s, and the kind of social upheaval that's gone. But you hear, in your own family, obviously, but Vietnam and all that precipitated that for your father, maybe some of the challenges he faced in trying to just simply be a father. But an oasis of peace for you, and like you mentioned there, whether you're working with the chickens or the honey operation or different manual labor there, you unpack and expose the kind of rhythm of life for the monks, but then you also begin to talk about some of the characters that were there, including Brother Goodface. Is that right?
Yes. Yes, Brother Boniface, dear Brother Boniface, a Polish monk who went right from World War II. He was from Brooklyn. He went right from World War II into the gates of Gethsemane, and at age 29, he was still a novice there when they sent him out to Utah. He spent the rest of his life there, and for a good part of it, he was a mentor of sorts for me. Again, he was as you mentioned, in charge of the chicken coop, and he was the one who primarily would let me follow him around as he did his work, and every once in a while he'd have jobs for me in the chicken coop. From time to time I'd wander off, of course, like 11 or 12-year-old boys will do, and one time I did and rather upset the chickens, and turned around, and Brother Boniface floated into view and was sort of a humming, singing a combination. He calmed the chickens down immediately where I had ruffled the feathers. And I call that my own version of St. Francis preaching to the birds, right? It was Brother Bon and the chickens.
Yeah. And you and your mother kind of became the couriers for his great acts of charity, kind of behind the scenes, but really a kind of conduit. However, the enterprise of the chickens was really profitable in a worldly sense, so that it could really support charitable endeavors.
It was. Amazingly, as a boy, I would watch him hand envelopes full of cash to my mother, and she would get money orders from banks and send them to priests and nuns in India who were working on water projects and building schools, and to lepers in Molokai, Hawaii, and I thought it was interesting as a young man. Of course, 45 years later, I realized how significant that is. That a monk making money from chickens and selling books in rural northern Utah is supporting charitable activities all around the world. It's quite a wondrous story if you think about it.
Mm-hmm. And so the material support that was kind of radiating outward, and then also his communications. And we think of the Cistercian order. One of the things that the great movie Into Great Silence with the Carthusians, that they carried out a great correspondence, which wasn't shown on screen, through the internet and other ways as well. But the note that you cite that Brother Boniface had written to a woman in particular, his style: let your God love you, be silent, be still, alone, empty before your God, say nothing, ask nothing, be silent, be still. Let your God look upon you, that is all. God knows, God understands, God loves you with an enormous love. So the balm of those words must have fallen so well on that heart that was received, and just to be in the presence of such a man. Not all was always so tranquil. You kind of make reference, and again, this is something vivid for me as I think about the explosion post-Vatican II, liturgically and other things. The monks did not always compose themselves in decorous solemnity. There was also other kind of liturgical phenomenon popping up.
Yes. The abbot liked to have balloons in church.
What is this, a school mass or what's going on here?
Yes, exactly. He was this cool California Hollywood priest who left that parish life and joined the monastery, and he would wear aviator sunglasses and talk about balloons in church and Gandhi, and then the next moment he would be singing traditional Cistercian chant. It was quite an amazing combination and a beautiful blend of spiritualities.
Yeah, and was he the one who even cited the American tractor maker John Deere? There are no easy solutions, only intelligent choices, or maybe that was in another context.
Yes. One of the monks wrote that in his missal as a meditation. So a little secular wisdom injected into the Cistercian life.
So it speaks to us here, for whom the green is all very important. I'm sorry, Kelly.
Sorry.
You grew up with that other religion, the red religion, right?
That's right. Farmall.
That's Farmall. That's tremendous as well. And so the Latter-day Saints and your mother, her spirituality obviously steeped in the kind of Catholic culture, the reading that she did, which was kind of something that you imitated her in, not just reading the encyclopedia, but really becoming aware of the way in which so many great Catholic authors and others are there. But she was also had room for Billy Graham and some of the other spiritualities.
Yes. Billy Graham and Oral Roberts. We combined Bishop Fulton Sheen and Billy Graham often within the same week. It was again a very interesting blend of family theology.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to turn to something much more sensitive here. As you had moved, I believe, to a new neighbor, your mom, kind of a single mom trying to work and provide for you, went to a new neighborhood that was a pretty tough place. And as you made your way to one day kind of through a kind of a dicier area, you had a really kind of tragic and unfortunate encounter that left its mark on you.
Yes, I was riding my bike home from baseball practice and encountered an individual and unfortunately was sexually assaulted in a parking lot of an abandoned wedding reception hall of all places. Very, very difficult time right as I was finishing 8th grade, about to go into high school.
And you described that, in desperation and anguish, just that the prayer of the Hail Mary kind of came to mind. You began praying this prayer as this whole horrible thing is unfolding, and it at least had some impact on your assailant.
I did. Desperate. I didn't know if this was my last day on earth, and good Catholic boy, I immediately started praying the Hail Mary, hoping it wouldn't, in fact, be the hour of my death. But remarkably, I was whispering it, but loud enough that I'm sure the assailant heard it. And as I started that, he stopped and let me go. I don't claim to be a great mystic or, the object of great miracles, but it was a bit of a personal miracle in my life that, the patroness of Holy Trinity Abbey, perhaps intervened to save me in that moment.
Mary, always a mother. And so you told your mother, obviously she was horrified, and you were, moved to speak with a couple of the priests. And could you talk about the reception and the assistance you found from them?
Yes. So this was the 70s, and I think if it happened today, I would be visiting therapists. But my mother, again, good Irish Catholic woman, said you need to talk to some priests, and she found two that we knew well, our family friends, one a Paulist priest and another the abbot of all people of the monastery, and said you should talk with them and they can help you. And I did. I talked with both of them at different times, and they offered incredible support and assistance and love. Something that I couldn't help but reflect on, many years later, as the church was dealing with its own struggles with the child abuse scandal. And it was a revelation to me that, that I needed to tell others and remind others that, yes, there were some very unfortunate incidents where Catholic priests did assault children, but there were many, many more incidents, including my own as an example, where priests and nuns and monks saved those of us who were victims of assault. And that full story, I think, needs to be told. And that was one of the sort of therapies. I call it spiritual therapy. One of the therapies I went through as I was, dealing with the scandal in my own terms was remembering the love and the help I got from Catholic priests and nuns to help me sort of complete the picture as I was analyzing my own relationship with the church in the face of the scandal.
I was struck by your vulnerability in sharing this in your memoir, and the pervasiveness of this, and obviously in the church. And we're coming up on our break. I guess I'd like to just talk about that it was, even as you found consolation and healing, this also had its impact on your faith. And so maybe we'll come back and talk about your sense of the church, for better or worse.
Happy to do that.
We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio provided by the Sarah Vocations Ministry, including the St. Sarah Club of Des Moines and the Sarah Club of Council Bluffs. Sarah is an apostolate of the Worldwide Catholic Church dedicated to fostering and supporting priesthood and religious vocations. Sarahans strive to accomplish their mission through prayer, fellowship, and service to the bishop, priests, sisters, and all in religious formation, and in doing so to increase their own holiness. Learn more at joinsarah.org, joinserra.org. Thank you, Sarahans, for your support of Iowa Catholic Radio.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Catholic Women Now provided in part by Marr Security, providing security solutions for homes and businesses since 1953. Marr Security is a Catholic-owned family business supplying security systems, access control systems, video surveillance, fire alarm systems, and video doorbells. All alarm systems are monitored out of their monitoring center located in the state of Iowa. Marr Security, 515-244-5660, permarsecurity.com.
Welcome back. You're listening to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. We are back with Michael Patrick O'Brien, author of the book Monastery Mornings.
So Kelly and I reconciled, in terms of allegiances to particular farm implements here, but the reconciling force of the church, but also that the church can wound as well. And we think of the beauty of the church. I was fortunate to be in Salt Lake a few years ago. Did not get into the Church of the Madeleine, the cathedral there. It was July 4th, and they'd already celebrated that day. And then I was touched by the great social services that are provided to the homeless people in the area as well. So you have a connection with that church, right?
Yes. That my wife and I were married there over 30 years ago, and in fact, as we're talking now, I can see the front of the church from my office window. It's a beautiful landmark here in Salt Lake City.
Well, I'll look for the personal tour someday. But
yes.
You reflect, I think, very beautifully. The church is much like the Holy Trinity. It reveres three phases in one. It's an institution, a community of people. It's an institution. It's secondly, a community of people, and thirdly, a servant to those people. And so the institutional face of the church, yes, it can be an agent of social change and things, but it also can wound people. So, the PTSD, if I could just use that phrase, that you experienced from your own sexual abuse, but then to see this scarring the face of Christ and the church, did it have an impact on your faith?
It did have an impact on my faith. And in fact, I came close to leaving the church because I was so disappointed by what I call the bad shepherds, people who were in office before you, people like you, Bishop Solus, Bishop Niederauer, who I knew well here in Salt Lake, much different figures, but there were some bad actors, and it was distressing to those of us in the pews. And coincidentally, as I was sort of ruminating on all of those problems and issues, is when I learned that the monastery was closing. And so the two events coincided in my mind. And as I mentioned in the book, I had to sort of go backwards in order to go forward with the church. And writing the book was, as I said before, a form of spiritual therapy for me, because I had this deep love for the church I grew up in, and I had to reconnect with that in order to get past, forgive, understand the church, that was ridden with the scandal. The book sort of is in addition to a memoir and a love letter to some monks, it's a story of how, one Catholic man sort of wrestled with these issues and came out on the other side.
Yeah, you migrated across country to Notre Dame there. Obviously, the Holy Cross Fathers and Brothers there were another formative community for you as well. But coming back, and you really unpack the vows that the Trappists and Trappistines take, in the spirit of St. Bernard and his rule and things. But this fifth and final vow, the conversion of manners that you describe, and how a non-monk might apply that. And of course, you bring in a little philosophy, which warms my philosopher's heart. But can you talk about how you've kind of incorporated this as a disposition of your own life?
Yeah, so there's that phrase, right? A monk in the world, and I don't live like a monk in the world, but I certainly have connections in the world to the monk life, and as such, I had to translate the Trappist vows to my own life. And the fifth one they take, conversion of manners, on their website they refer to it as the notion that people can change, that people can grow.
That's a hopeful note. Yes.
It is a hopeful note, and in fact it's a hopeful note for the scandal that we dealt with in the church, isn't it? That that we can learn from it and grow from it, so I have found ways to apply each of those Trappist vows to moments in my own life, and the notion that we can grow and change has certainly been one that's been most important to me.
Well, that note of hope, and I think even the graphic on the cover of Monastery Mornings, My Unusual Boyhood Among the Saints and Monks. Quite honestly, I quoted one of your lines in my daily mass homily from Joel a week ago, speaking about the darkness and the coming of the day. Darkness pervades all our lives. It's often an unwelcome companion, dreaded from the moment we glimpse one of its many garments, such as poverty, divorce, sexual abuse, and scandal, to name a few. Thankfully, morning shadows night, light stalls darkness, walks with us too, and enfolds us. So thank you very much, Michael O'Brien, for your book and your sharing this morning. And I'd heartily encourage people to find a copy for themselves.
Thank you, Bishop, and stay well.
This has been another edition of Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. Thank you to our guests and our listeners on Iowa Catholic Radio and the Spirit Catholic Radio Network.
You can hear Making It Personal with Bishop William Joensen every week on Iowa Catholic Radio and iowacatholicradio.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Making It Personal is provided by Sarah Vocations Ministry. Learn more at joinserra.org.